Welcome to SBS News in Easy English. I'm Gareth Boreham. 2 new opinion polls have given Labor a big lead over the Coalition as the Prime Minister prepares to call an election. While the government has closed the gap slightly in the latest news poll, Labor still holds a 54 to 46% lead on the two-party preferred vote. The Labor Party's primary vote has fallen 3 percentage points, while the Coalition's has improved by 1. But another poll in the Financial Review shows the Coalition trailing Labor by as much as 10 percentage points, 45 to 55% on the two-party preferred. Opposition leader Anthony Albanese says voters are ready for change.
This is a tired old government that's out of ideas and out of time. They want to change. They want a government that actually has a plan for a better future, not a plan that's divided, not a government that is just arguing.
But Deputy Prime Minister Barnaby Joyce has seized on the closer news poll result, saying it shows people are starting to see the choice between the two major parties in a different light. Ukraine is demanding new sanctions on Russia from major Western powers. The mayor of the town of Bucha, 37 kilometres from the Ukrainian capital Kyiv, says there has been a massacre of 300 of its residents by Russian forces. The report has sparked condemnation from across Europe. The Russian government denies the allegations, but Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba says international war crimes investigators should visit the area to collect evidence. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says Russia's actions now are a result of Western powers being too soft on the superpower in recent years. He's singled out former German Chancellor Angela Merkel and French President Nicolas Sarkozy.
I invite Mrs Merkel and Mr Sarkozy to visit Bucha and see what their policy of concessions towards Russia has led to in 14 years. See with your own eyes the tortured Ukrainians and Ukrainian women.
Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has survived an attempt to oust him and is seeking fresh elections. The Deputy Speaker of the Pakistani Parliament, a member of Mr Khan's party, blocked an opposition no-confidence motion that Mr Khan had been expected to lose. The Deputy Speaker said the motion was part of a foreign conspiracy to get rid of Mr Khan and was unconstitutional. Mr Khan says the country's National Security Committee has accepted his argument that the attempt to oust him was driven by the United States.
Those minutes
of the conversation between our ambassador and their official, that entire conversation was shared with our National Security Council. The minutes of that meeting were confirmed, and it was confirmed that this plan to oust me was from abroad, which was interference in Pakistan's internal politics. And the basis of this no-confidence vote was from abroad.
Internal politics में और ये जो no confidence थी, इसकी बुनियाद बाहर थी.
The United States denies Mr Khan's claims. 6 people have been killed and another 12 injured in a shooting in the US city of Sacramento. The shooting occurred in the early hours of the morning in the Californian capital, near the Golden One Center, a venue for basketball games and concerts. Police say they are still searching for suspects, with no one in custody. Sacramento's Mayor Darrell Steinberg says tougher gun controls are needed.
This morning our city has a broken heart. This is a senseless and unacceptable tragedy, and I emphasize the word unacceptable. Thoughts and prayers, of course, are appropriate for the victims and their families and the people who are still who are fighting for their lives now in the hospital. But thoughts and prayers are not nearly enough.
To sport now, and in tennis, Carlos Alcaraz has become the youngest ever winner of the Miami Masters. The Spanish 18-year-old has beaten Norwegian Casper Ruud in the final 7-5, 6-4. It continues a rapid rise for Alcaraz, who was not even ranked in the world top 100 this time last year. He'll be ranked 11th after this triumph. He won a tournament in Rio de Janeiro in February and made the quarterfinals of the US Open last year. I'm Gareth Borum. This is SBS News in Easy English.
Welcome to SBS News in Easy English. I'm Hannah Kwan. The bodies of a father and son who died in a landslip in the Blue Mountains are being recovered by crews in New South Wales. The two are from a family of 5 on holiday from the United Kingdom who were on a walking track when they were crushed by falling rocks. The 9-year-old boy and 49-year-old man died at the scene at Wentworth Pass. A 50-year-old woman and a 14-year-old boy remain in hospital where they are in a critical condition. The 5th family member, a 15-year-old girl, has been treated for shock following the incident and is in a stable condition. Defence Minister Peter Dutton says Australia could receive nuclear-powered submarines sooner than expected. It was previously suggested they could arrive by 2040, but Mr. Dutton says they could arrive earlier with help from other countries, but says more will be revealed later this year. Australia is imposing further sanctions on Russia in response to its invasion of Ukraine and will ban the export of luxury goods like purebred horses, truffles, and wine. The new sanctions include everything from tobacco to leather and furs to musical instruments and come on top of the existing export ban on aluminium ores. Ukraine's ambassador to Australia, Vasyl Myronyshenko, says while Ukraine welcomes the sanctions, there's still more Australia and other Western nations can do to help.
And I think as economic sanctions, further sanctions on and embargoes on the import of any fossil fuels or agri products coming from Russia, divesting from the Russian assets, ban on export of products to Russia. Of course, we need help and support with collecting evidence and prosecuting the Russian military for their war crimes. We need more humanitarian assistance.
Meanwhile, Russia's ambassador to the United Nations says it will present what he calls empirical evidence to the United Nations Security Council to show its forces have not been killing civilians in Ukraine. Vasily Nebyenza says the story of a massacre by Russian forces in the town of Bucha is a false plot by Ukraine and its Western allies.
This is a warfare, and in warfare anything happens, and you cannot exclude that civilians are dying in a war, and that is a sad fact of life. But the footage that we're being presented with, in particular in Bucha, on which I spoke, does not give us any doubt that that was a stage.
In sport, Australia's national men's rugby union team, the Wallabies, will play an international match at the Sydney Cricket Ground for the first time in 36 years. The Wallabies will play a 3-test series against England. The matches will be held in July on the 2nd, the 9th and the 16th. I'm Hannah Kwon. This is SBS News in Easy English. This is SBS News in Easy English. I'm Hannah Kwon. Australia, the United Kingdom and the United States are planning to expand cooperation on hypersonic weapons under the AUKUS Pact. The 3 countries are working on a plan to develop nuclear-powered submarines for the Royal Australian Navy. The Australian government wants to deliver the first submarine before 2040, if not earlier. Prime Minister Scott Morrison says the aim of the alliance is to protect and defend.
We do these things to keep Australians safe. We do these things to bring balance and strategic certainty to our region, and that's why we work with so many partners in the region. We engage in this as an effort to achieve peace and stability, not the alternative. The reason we invest in all of these things is to create a peaceful environment and a stable environment in our region, not one driven by conflict.
The Bureau of Meteorology is predicting heavy rainfall across New South Wales for the rest of the week. New South Wales has been hit by repeated flooding over the past few months, with the north and northwest of the state being hit by ongoing rainfall since February. State Premier Dominic Perrottet says he is frustrated with a lack of federal funding for flood-affected victims in the state's north, as some people are saying local government areas held by the Liberal Party are being favoured. Prime Minister Scott Morrison has defended the federal government's response to the flood crisis. Health authorities are preparing for more COVID-19 and flu cases before winter. It's expected to put more pressure on hospitals, which are already dealing with staff shortages and surgery backlogs. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is calling for the Russian military to be brought to justice for war crimes as soon as possible. He accuses Russian troops of the worst atrocities since World War II. Mr. Zelensky made an announcement at his first appearance in front of the United Nations Security Council.
Now the world can see what the Russian military did in Bucha while keeping the city under their occupation. But the world has yet to see what they have done in other occupied cities and regions of our country.
And in sport, Emily Bates has won the AFL Women's Best and Fairest Award. The Brisbane Lions vice-captain narrowly beat Anne Hatchard, securing the win by 1 vote. Bates used the moment to thank her teammates for their support during the Queensland floods.
One of our key values at the Lions is sisterhood, and that was, the girls were straight away there to obviously clean up the house and do what they could for our home, which obviously was, ruined by the floods. So, sisterhood is definitely what it feels like at the Lions. I love these girls like sisters, and that's what has driven our success, really, is that love for each other and care.
You've been listening to SBS News in Easy English. I'm Hannah Kwan. This is SBS News in Easy English. Prime Minister Scott Morrison has reversed a decision to support a multi-million-dollar funding package for flood recovery in southeast Queensland. At first, the federal government said they wouldn't go halves with the Queensland government in $741 million in flood recovery, saying most of the package was a state responsibility. Sydney has gone over its annual rainfall totals in just over 3 months. 1,226.8 millimetres of rain has fallen in the city this year, compared with a yearly average of 1,213.4 millimetres. More wet weather is expected for New South Wales, with forecasts for heavy rainfall over the coming days. Severe weather and flood warnings have been issued across the state, with some residents in low-lying areas of Warona in Sydney South being told to evacuate. Prime Minister Scott Morrison has faced an angry pensioner in front of a large crowd during a pre-election visit to a pub in Newcastle. Mr. Morrison was approached by a disability support pensioner named Ray at the Edgeworth Tavern.
This is what you said when you got elected last time. We're going to help all those people that worked all their lives, paid their taxes, and those that have a go will get a go. Well, I've had a go, mate. I've worked all my life and paid my taxes.
Meanwhile, Prime Minister Scott Morrison says he can understand that Ray was very upset and says his office will do what it can to help.
As you move around, I like hearing from people, and I hear from people all the time. And so while some might have some very complex issues that need to be addressed, others, I must say, who were there last night, it was great to see them.
Federal opposition leader Anthony Albanese is calling for the Prime Minister to remove Russian diplomats from Australia. Mr. Albanese says the suggestion doesn't apply to the Russian ambassador to Australia, but says Australia should follow the decisions of countries like France and Germany.
We have war crimes being committed. We have civilians being murdered. We have rape being used as a weapon of war, and we need to send the strongest possible message to Russia and join with our allies in Europe who've made this decision.
A study by Plan International and L'Oreal has found women feel more unsafe in public after the pandemic because of less bystanders around to stick up for them. The research found that 1 in 5 Australian women aged between 18 and 24 feel unsafe walking alone in public. And for young women with a disability, 1 in 3 felt unsafe. In sport, Tiger Woods is preparing to make his return to golf at the Augusta National. It comes just 14 months after a car crash which left him with an injured leg. Mr. Woods says he is determined to compete.
Well, as of right now, I feel like I am going to play. As of right now, my recovery has been good. I've been very excited about how I've recovered each and every day, and that's been the challenge. That's why I came up here and tested out for 27 holes. But it's the recovery. How am I going to get all the swelling out and recover for the next day?
You've said countless times throughout your career that you don't enter a golf tournament unless you think that you can win it. So the question is simple. Do you think you can win the Masters this week?
I do.
This is SBS News in Easy English. I'm Hannah Kwan. This is SBS News in Easy English. I'm Hannah Kwan. New South Wales is continuing to experience record rainfall and floods. A man has died in a car in floodwaters at Cobbitty, southwest of Sydney. Parts of the state have received more than 200 millimetres of rain in the past 24 hours. Acting Commissioner for the State Emergency Service, Dan Austin, says people need to take the advice of authorities seriously.
We do expect to see those river levels continue to rise for some time before they start to ease back over the next 12 to 24 hours. So what that really means for us is that we will continue to have flooded waterways and flooded river systems for a number of days yet to come. So we ask people once again to be really mindful of their situation.
Tasmania has a new Premier. Jeremy Rockcliffe was elected unopposed in a Liberal Party room meeting this morning. He'll take over from Peter Gutwin, who announced his shock resignation on Monday, saying he wanted to spend more time with his family after 2 years governing the state through the COVID-19 pandemic. Mr. Rockcliffe paid tribute to Mr. Gutwin, saying he'll continue their legacy for Tasmania.
It is my plan to lead a government with integrity, a government that is courageous, accountable, delivers on its commitments, but above all, I will lead a government with heart.
Former Sydney teacher and professional rugby league player Chris Dawson will be tried for murder following a High Court ruling. Mr. Dawson is alleged to have murdered his wife, Lynette, in 1982. He will face trial in May. Armoured military vehicles that Australia is donating to Ukraine will begin to be flown from Queensland today. Australia has agreed to supply the Bushmaster vehicles in response to a direct request to the federal parliament from Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. The carriers have been painted olive green